It was a Wednesday night, and I was halfway through reheating leftover Thai food when the front door opened with a thud. Not slammed, just heavier than usual, enough to make me glance up from the microwave and know something was off. Ben came in without a word. No greeting, no sarcastic comment about the state of our kitchen. Nothing. He just kicked off his sneakers, dropped his bag, and stood there for a second like he forgot why he'd even come home. I leaned against the counter. "You good?" He didn't answer at first. He just rubbed his face with both hands, then let out this short, humorless laugh. "She dumped me," he said, finally meeting my eyes. Right there in the coffee shop, like we were talking about what movie to stream tonight, and then she just goes, "I think we should break up." Like she was ordering a damn latte. The microwave beeped behind me. I ignored it. "Shit," I said, keeping it simple. I wasn't going to throw out the usual, "you're better off" cliches. Ben wasn't the type who needed silver linings. He just needed someone to listen. He walked over and sank onto the couch like gravity hit him differently. I could tell by the way he moved, shoulders low, hands rubbing his thighs like he didn't know what to do with them, that it hurt more than he was letting on. I grabbed the food, tossed him a fork, and sat beside him. We ate in silence for a while. No TV, no music, just the quiet, broken up by the occasional clink of plastic utensils against takeout containers. "She said I'm not emotionally communicative," he said eventually, around a mouthful of rice. "That I don't open up, which is just, I don't know, maybe she's right." I chewed slowly, trying to think of something helpful to say. "You talk to me," he glanced over. "Do I?" "Yeah. I mean, not about everything. But when shit matters?" "Yeah." He nodded a little, looking at the wall like he was trying to believe me. There was a pause. Then he said, "I didn't see it coming. At all. I thought we were okay." That part hit me. I could feel it in my chest. The quiet kind of heartbreak, where you don't even have the luxury of anger yet. Just the dull ache of confusion. "Want to watch something dumb?" I offered. "That show with the ghost hunting twins is back." He actually smiled a little. "Those guys are idiots." "That's the point." I queued it up, and we watched for maybe 20 minutes before Ben pulled the blanket over his lap and sort of folded into himself. Like his body was physically reacting to the conversation he couldn't escape. Eventually, he leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling. "I know this is going to sound weird," he said quietly, "but can I sleep in your room tonight?" That made me pause. Not because it was uncomfortable, but because it wasn't something Ben would normally ask. We were close, lived together for almost a year, shared meals, inside jokes, late night talks, but we weren't sharing a bed close. Still, he looked small in that moment, not literally. Ben was tall, broad, athletic, in a casual, "I played high school soccer but don't talk about it" way. But his expression, the way he avoided eye contact when he asked, it was like watching someone drop their armor. "Yeah," I said, "of course." We finished the episode, but he barely watched. His eyes were glazed over. When we went to my room, he hesitated in the doorway, like he was worried it'd be too weird. But I didn't make a big deal of it. I just tossed him one of my pillows and slid into bed like it was nothing. He lay down facing the opposite direction, pulling the blanket over himself. I could feel the space between us, tense and uncertain. The room was quiet for a long time. Then he whispered, "Can I don't know, like, would it be weird if I asked you to hold me? Just for a bit?" That made my chest tighten. "No," I said. "It's not weird." I shifted closer. Carefully. Gave him room to move away if he wanted, but he didn't. When I put my arm around him, he exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath since he walked in. His body was warm, stiff at first, like he didn't know how to relax. But then he leaned back slightly, just enough that our bodies touched more fully. I could feel his heartbeat. Fast at first, then slower. "I haven't been held in weeks," he mumbled. "Like, not even hugged. Isn't that crazy? You go from being in someone's life every day to nothing." I didn't say anything. I just kept my arm around him, anchoring him the only way I knew how. And then, very softly, he said, "You smell like laundry and soap. It's nice." I smiled into the dark. Glad I'm useful for something. He huffed a laugh, then went quiet again. That night, I didn't sleep much, not because I was uncomfortable or because of the closeness, but because I couldn't stop thinking about how easy it felt, how natural, like maybe we'd been orbiting this moment for longer than either of us realized. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Ben breathing, deep, steady, still asleep. The sun had barely started sneaking through the slits in the blinds, giving the room that pale silver glow that made everything feel softer. Safer, maybe. I hadn't moved all night. My arm was still around him, my body curled slightly into his. I don't think I slept more than a couple hours, but I wasn't tired. Not in the way you'd expect. Ben shifted a little, a small murmur escaping his lips. Then his body stilled again. It hit me how rare this was, not just the physical closeness, but seeing him this vulnerable. Ben was the guy who made dumb jokes in tense moments, who changed the subject when anything got too emotional, who always pretended he had his shit together, even when he clearly didn't. And now here he was, letting himself fall apart, or at least letting himself lean a little. He woke up slowly, the way people do when they don't want to face the day. I felt his chest rise in a long inhale, then he stretched, half turning until he realized I was still behind him. "Shit," he mumbled, voice gravelly. "I forgot I was here." I pulled back slightly, giving him space. "It's okay. You were out cold." He turned over to face me, one arm under his head, eyes still puffy with sleep. His hair was a total mess, flattened on one side, sticking up on the other, and somehow that just made him look more human. "Sorry if I made things weird," he said. I don't know, do that." "It's not weird," I said, maybe a little too fast. "You needed someone. That's not weird." He watched me for a second, eyes flicking over my face like he was trying to read something. Then he gave a short nod and sat up, rubbing his face with both hands. I missed the warmth instantly. We went through the morning like nothing happened, like it was just another Thursday. He made coffee, I toasted bagels. I handed him the strawberry cream cheese he liked without being asked, and he smirked like he appreciated it, but didn't know how to say it. By noon, it was almost like the night before hadn't happened. Except it had, and I couldn't stop replaying it. Every time he passed behind me while I was on my laptop, I could feel the air shift. Every time our eyes met in the kitchen, I felt like he was about to say something, but he never did. Then around 4 p.m., I walked out of my room to find him sitting on the couch, laptop closed, staring at the TV without really watching it. He looked up. "Hey, you want to order pizza tonight?" I blinked. Yeah, sure." "My treat," he said, grabbing his phone. "We ate it cross-legged on the floor like we used to in the early days of living together, before we bought a coffee table." Something about it felt nostalgic, even though it hadn't been that long ago. "You know," he said, mid-chew, "I don't think I've ever felt more pathetic in my life than I did yesterday." I looked up, surprised by how casually he said it. Ben wiped his fingers on a napkin and leaned back against the couch. I wasn't going to tell anyone. I was just going to come home, pretend it didn't happen, maybe cry like a loser in the shower. "You're not a loser." "Yeah, well," he looked down at his hands. "You were the first person I thought of when it happened." I swallowed hard, not sure what to say to that. He laughed, but it wasn't really a funny laugh, more like disbelief. "Isn't that sad? Should have been her, or my sister, or one of the guys from soccer. But no, it was you." I shook my head. "That's not sad, man. That just means you trust me." "Yeah," he said it quietly. "I do." We didn't talk much for the rest of the evening. He watched a movie while I sat beside him answering emails. Every so often, our knees would bump. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. Later, I went to brush my teeth, and when I came back to my room, he was standing in the doorway. "Hey," he said, voice low, "would it be okay if I stayed again? Just tonight. I know it's asking a lot." "You don't even have to ask." He didn't say anything. just gave a small nod and walked past me into the room. We got into bed, and for a while, we just lay there on our backs, staring at the ceiling. I could hear the faint sounds of the city outside, car tires on wet pavement, some guy yelling into his phone, the distant thump of bass from another apartment. Ben turned toward me. I felt the mattress shift, then the warmth of his body again. "I don't think I've ever felt safe like this," he said softly. My heart was thudding so hard it drowned out the street noise. "I've had girlfriends," he went on, "and dates and whatever, but nobody ever just held me, without expecting anything." He was close now, his forehead just a few inches from mine. "I'm not expecting anything either," I said. "I just don't want you to be alone right now." He nodded slowly, eyes searching mine. "You're a good guy," I shrugged. "Maybe." "No," he said. "You are." Then he moved closer. Slowly. Hesitantly. Our foreheads touched. Not a kiss. Not even a clear invitation. Just a moment. And it said more than anything either of us could have said out loud. The next few days were a blur. The tension in the apartment was palpable, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was familiar in a way. Ben wasn't acting any differently outwardly. He was still the same guy I'd lived with for months. Sarcastic, easygoing, with an occasional dry joke that made me chuckle despite myself. But there was something else too. Something quiet. Something that lingered in the air between us. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but every time our eyes met, there was this unspoken understanding, this new layer to our relationship. It wasn't just about the cuddling either. It was about the vulnerability that had cracked open between us. He didn't just want comfort from me. He wanted connection. And I was more than happy to offer it. That Saturday, I went out for coffee with some friends. It was a small gathering, just a couple of people from the group I'd known since college. We talked about work, made plans for the summer, and all the usual things you do when you're hanging out with people you don't see often enough. But the whole time, I kept checking my phone. Just a glance here and there. I didn't know if I was waiting for something from Ben, or if I was just hoping he was doing okay on his own. The idea of him being alone in the apartment without me there made my chest tighten. When I got back later that evening, Ben was sitting on the couch, the TV flickering in front of him, though he wasn't watching. His elbows rested on his knees, his hands clasped together loosely. When I walked in, his gaze lifted, and a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Hey," he said, voice casual, but his eyes seemed a little more tired than usual. "How was your day?" "Good," I said, kicking off my shoes. "Had coffee with some friends. You?" "Just the usual. Work, laundry, you know." He paused, then added, "I went for a run." I raised an eyebrow. "A run?" Ben nodded, shrugging. "I needed to do something. Clear my head, I guess. Been feeling restless." I walked over and dropped my bag on the couch. "That's good. What's on your mind?" He glanced at me. "You." I froze for a second, unsure how to respond. "Wait, no." He laughed a little awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I mean, you've been really good to me." "I don't know how to thank you for that." I felt a rush of warmth. "You don't need to thank me." "No, I do," he said, voice a little firmer. "I've been acting like everything's fine, but it's not, and you've been here, and I really appreciate it." I wasn't sure what to say. It felt like we were walking a fine line between friendship and something more, and I didn't want to cross it. But at the same time, I knew he was in pain. That was enough to make me put my own feelings aside for a while. "You're welcome," I said, smiling. "I got your back." There was a long silence, and for a second, it felt like the air in the room was charged with something unspoken. The moment lingered before Ben stood up and stretched. "Pizza tonight?" he suggested. "Yeah, sounds good." I agreed, already feeling more relaxed. He had that way of shifting the mood. No matter how awkward things got, Ben was always the guy who could bring things back to normal. After pizza and some bad TV, we ended up back in my room. Ben lay down on the bed like he had the previous few nights, stretching out on his stomach, his head resting on the pillow. I was in the middle of picking up clothes when he spoke. "Hey," he said, looking up at me. "I've been thinking." I sat on the edge of the bed. "About what?" "About us." My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I was afraid of where he was going with this. I stayed silent, watching him, my pulse picking up in the quiet. "I know we've been friends for a while now," he said slowly, "but I don't know. I think I'm starting to feel like maybe it's more than that." I froze. He raised his head slightly, propping himself up on his elbows. His eyes were heavy-lidded, dark with something I couldn't quite decipher. "I don't want to mess this up," he said, almost like an afterthought. "I don't want to complicate things, but it's been harder to ignore how close we've been lately." I didn't know what to say at first. I wasn't sure if I was misreading him, but the look in his eyes felt too intense for this to just be about the situation with his ex. I cleared my throat, trying to act normal. "You're not messing anything up," I said. "I'm here for you, always." He studied me for a long moment, and I felt the weight of his gaze, the shift in our dynamic. Then, without another word, he reached over and pulled me into the bed beside him. Not aggressively, not urgently, but just a pull that felt natural, a pull that made sense. The moment was quiet, comfortable. I felt the heat of his body against mine, his breath even as he lay there with his arm around me. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and calming. "I think I need this," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "More than I thought." I didn't know how to respond to that. I didn't know what he meant. Was this just about comfort? Or is there something deeper between us now? Instead of overthinking it, I just held him. Let the silence wrap around us like a cocoon, where nothing had to be said aloud. "Thank you," he whispered again. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Sunday came slow, like it didn't want to bother anyone. The sky was cloudy, soft gray light filling the apartment. I woke up with Ben still next to me, his arm draped loosely over my waist, breathing deep and even. It took me a second to remember where I was, or more accurately, what this was. We'd spent the last 3 nights in the same bed, always the same quiet request from him, always the same, "Yeah, of course," from me. What started as comfort after a breakup had turned into something routine, and I wasn't sure when that shift had happened. I didn't want to ruin it by asking. Ben stirred a little, his body stretching out under the sheets, then curling back in. He wasn't fully awake, but his hand gripped a little tighter around my side, like his body instinctively wanted to keep me close. It felt stupid, but my chest ached in the best possible way. Eventually, he rolled over onto his back and groaned softly. "What time is it?" "Almost 9, I said, glancing at my phone. "Damn. Feels like I slept for 3 years." "You kinda needed it." He let out a dry chuckle and rubbed his eyes. "I feel like I've been living in your bed lately." "You say that like it's a bad thing." He looked over at me, lips twitching into a tired smile. "It's not." The way he said it, low, quiet, almost like a confession, sent a jolt through me. But I just nodded, playing it cool. Later, while we were eating cereal on the couch, Ben suddenly asked, "You ever think about how weird it is, the people we end up closest to?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I didn't expect you to be the person I'd trust the most when everything fell apart. No offense." I laughed. "None taken." "That's kind of a backhanded compliment, though." He smirked. "Nah, I'm serious. You've just always been chill. Easy to be around." I didn't realize how much I needed that until now. The conversation faded there, but the energy stayed. That soft, almost affectionate buzz between us that never quite went away anymore. Later that night, after dinner and a few episodes of a show neither of us were really watching, Ben stretched out on the couch and yawned. "You gonna kick me out of your bed tonight?" he asked, eyes closed, voice teasing but quieter than usual. I shrugged. "Not unless you want me to." He cracked one eye open. "What if I don't?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He got up and followed me back to my room without another word. We brushed our teeth in sync, like a couple that had been living together for years. It was weirdly domestic, and weirdly not weird at all. When we climbed into bed, he turned toward me immediately this time. No space between us, no hesitation. Just his hand on my chest, fingers lightly resting there like he was anchoring himself. "You're warm," he mumbled. I smiled into the dark. "That's what blankets are for." "No," he said, his voice slower, like he was already slipping into sleep. "It's different. Feels better when it's you." My throat went dry. I wanted to ask what he meant. I wanted to say, "Ben, what are we doing?" But I didn't. Instead, I reached up and rested my hand over his. We stayed like that for a while, neither of us saying anything, but everything between us so loud I could barely think. Eventually he whispered, "I think I'm starting to feel like myself again." I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. "That's good." There was a pause. Then, "And I think part of it is you." My heart kicked into my ribs, sudden and sharp. He didn't say anything else after that. Just breathed. And eventually, I heard the subtle shift in his rhythm. The sound of sleep. I stayed awake for a while longer, staring at the ceiling, wondering when this turned into something I couldn't walk away from, wondering if he felt it too. If this was still about needing comfort, or if he was slowly reaching for something more. And if he was, how far was I willing to go with him? On Monday, Ben didn't come straight home after work. He texted me around 6. "Gonna be late. Grabbing a drink with some guys from the office." Normal. Expected. The kind of message that wouldn't have meant anything a few weeks ago. But now it felt strange, like something was missing from the evening. I made dinner alone and left his half in the fridge. Watched a few episodes of a show we'd started together, then paused halfway through the third one out of guilt. It felt wrong to keep going without him. Around 10:30, I was brushing my teeth when I heard the front door open. I poked my head out of the bathroom just as Ben was slipping off his shoes. He looked a little buzzed, not wasted, just enough that his smile was looser, his eyes shinier. "Hey," he said, voice low and a little slurred. "Sorry I missed dinner." "No worries," I said, stepping into the hallway. "You hungry?" He shook his head. "Had some greasy bar food. Regretting it already." I nodded, waiting for him to say more. He didn't. Instead, he walked right past me, into my room, and sat on the edge of my bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like it was his room too now. "You okay?" I asked, standing in the doorway. He looked up at me with this expression I couldn't read. Not quite sad, not quite drunk. Something in between. "I didn't tell them," he said. "Tell who what?" "The guys I was with. About the breakup. About anything." I just sat there, laughing at stupid stories, pretending like everything's normal. He rubbed his eyes, then ran a hand through his hair, leaving it messier than before. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." I walked over and sat beside him, close but not touching. "Because you know I'll listen." He looked down at his hands. "Yeah, that's probably it." There was a long pause, the room filled only by the soft hum of the heater kicking on. Then he asked, without looking at me, "Would it be weird if I said I didn't want to sleep alone again tonight?" I turned toward him slowly. "No, it wouldn't." He didn't say anything else. Just pulled off his shirt, then his jeans, and climbed into bed in his boxers. I followed, heart doing that same, now familiar hammering in my chest. It was different tonight. He was closer, touching me fully, intentionally. His chest against my back, one arm around my stomach. Not tentative this time, but firm, almost possessive. I didn't move. I didn't breathe for a second. Then I heard his voice, quiet and warm against my neck. I think I missed this more than the relationship. I shifted slightly to face him, our foreheads nearly touching in the dark. "Missed what?" "This," he whispered. "Being close, feeling connected, safe." My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. You didn't have that with her? He paused. No, not really. I think that's part of why it ended. I didn't know what to say to that. It felt dangerous to say the wrong thing, like I was standing on the edge of something fragile. But Ben wasn't finished. Can I ask you something kind of crazy? He said. I nodded, barely breathing. Have you ever thought about us? Like, not just as roommates? The air in the room changed instantly. The words hung there, heavy and electric. Yeah, I said, because I couldn't lie. I've thought about it. Ben exhaled like he'd been holding that question in for hours. Me too, he said. Lately, more than I want to admit. I waited for him to laugh it off, to say he was just tired or drunk or lonely. But he didn't. He reached out, fingertips brushing my jaw, and I leaned into the touch before I could stop myself. I don't know what this is, he said, or what it means. I just know that when I'm here with you, like this, I don't feel broken. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I leaned forward slowly, pressing my forehead to his. His breath hitched just a little. Then stay, I said, as long as you need. His lips brushed against mine. Not a kiss, not really, just a soft, lingering touch. Testing the water. And when I didn't pull away, he kissed me for real. Gentle, careful, but full of something that had been building between us for days. Maybe longer. When we finally broke apart, he kept his hand on my face, thumb tracing the edge of my cheekbone. Is this okay? He whispered. Yeah, I said, heart pounding. It's more than okay. We didn't talk much after that, just curled into each other, breathing the same air, sharing the same warmth. Whatever this was, it wasn't just comfort anymore. I thought the next morning might feel weird. I thought there'd be that awkward shuffle of feet, maybe some carefully avoided eye contact, some version of we were drunk, tired, emotional, and then back to pretending it never happened. But it didn't go that way. I woke up to Ben already looking at me, his eyes soft, unfocused, like he wasn't sure if he was still dreaming. His hand was resting on my chest, our legs tangled under the sheets. Hey, he whispered. Hey, I whispered back, my voice gravelly from sleep. He didn't move, didn't pull away or roll over or make a joke to deflect what had happened between us. He just kept watching me like I was something he wasn't quite ready to look away from. You okay? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think so. Neither of us said much after that. We stayed in bed longer than usual. He curled into me again, arm draped over my stomach, head tucked into the side of my neck like it was the most natural thing in the world. There wasn't any tension, just that strange, quiet comfort we'd slipped into over the last few days. But now it felt heavier, more charged. It wasn't just about him needing to not feel alone anymore. It was about wanting to feel close. To me. Eventually, we got up and made breakfast together. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. The usual. Except it wasn't usual at all. He kept bumping into me on purpose, nudging his hip against mine while waiting for the toaster. Smiling when I gave him a look. Every now and then, his hand would brush mine. And he wouldn't move it right away. After breakfast, he plopped down on the couch with a soft groan. You want to go out today? I asked. Walk around, maybe hit the bookstore? He looked over, surprised. You want to do something together in public? Why wouldn't I? Ben sat up a little straighter, studying me. I don't know. I guess I wasn't sure where we stand right now. That caught me off guard. Not because he said it, but because I didn't realize I'd been wondering the same thing. I sat down beside him, close enough that our knees touched. I mean, we don't have to define anything right this second. But I'm not trying to pretend last night didn't happen. He nodded slowly. Okay. Then, so if I, held your hand while we walked, that wouldn't be weird? I smiled. Only if you're super sweaty. He rolled his eyes, but I could see the relief in his expression. We did go out. Just wandered around the neighborhood, stopping at a little used bookstore and a coffee shop. And yeah, he held my hand, lightly at first, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to, but he didn't let go. There were glances. People on the sidewalk probably wondering if we were together. A couple of older ladies gave us tight, unreadable smiles. But neither of us said anything. We just walked, and it felt good. Natural. Later that night, we were back in the apartment, lights low, another movie playing on the TV, but neither of us was really watching. Ben sat beside me, thigh against mine, drink in hand. "I keep thinking about how fast this all happened," he said. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." "I don't want it to be a rebound thing." I turned to face him. "You think that's what this is?" "No," he said quickly. "That's the thing, it doesn't feel like that. Which is why I'm kind of freaking out." He leaned back, resting his head against the couch cushion. "Like, 1 second I'm heartbroken and sleeping on your floor, and now I'm kissing you, holding your hand, thinking about—" He stopped. "About what?" I asked gently. Ben glanced at me, face serious. "About what it'd be like to really be with you. Not just this, whatever we're doing." I felt something shift in my chest, tight and hot and terrifying. "And?" he sighed. "And it feels right." That silence settled again. Not heavy this time, just full, like it didn't need to be rushed. "I'm not trying to push you into anything," I said finally. "If this is too much or too soon—" "No," he cut in. "It's not. That's what scares me. How not weird it feels." He leaned in then, slowly, and kissed me again. Longer this time. Not testing. Not unsure. When we pulled apart, he kept his hand on my jaw, thumb resting just below my cheekbone. "I don't want to go back to separate rooms," he said softly. "You don't have to," I whispered. "You never did." We ended up in bed again that night. Only now, it didn't feel like a favor or a moment of weakness. It felt like a choice. His choice. And for the first time, it wasn't about healing. It was about us. It had been a week since the first night he asked to sleep in my bed. 7 days. But it felt like something had permanently shifted in the way we moved around each other. The old rhythm of roommates, shared groceries, split chores, who's taking the trash out kind of stuff, was still there. But layered under it now was something quieter, deeper, intimate in a way that didn't need words to name it. The bed sharing didn't stop. But it wasn't just about comfort anymore. He held me tighter now, slept closer. Sometimes we'd talk in the dark, half whispers and confessions spoken into the pillow. Sometimes we didn't say anything at all, just let the weight of his arm over my waist say enough. I should have felt amazing. In a way, I did. But part of me, some buried, cautious part, kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because this still wasn't a conversation. Not really. It was a pattern. And patterns could break. That Friday night, we were lying in bed after another night of takeout and reruns. Ben was pressed against me, his fingers idly tracing lines on my stomach under the hem of my shirt. "You're quiet," he said, his voice low. "Just thinking." "About?" I hesitated. Then, "About us." His hand paused for a second. "What about us?" "I don't know. Where this is going, I guess." He shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look at me. "Do you need it to go somewhere?" That wasn't the question I expected. "I don't know," I said again. "It's not that I need a label. I guess I want to know if this is real for you, or if it's just what you needed while you were hurting." Ben's face tightened slightly, not in offense, but in thought. He looked down, lips pressing into a line. Then he spoke, slowly. "I've asked myself that too. Whether I'm just replacing one comfort with another. Whether I'm clinging to you because you're safe. Because you've been here." I swallowed hard. "And?" I asked. His eyes met mine again, steady. "And?" I think that's how it started. But not what it is now. The air between us felt like it stilled. "When I was with her, I never felt this calm," he said. "I didn't realize how much of myself I was hiding just to make it work." He brushed a thumb along my jaw, his touch so soft it almost made me flinch. "With you, I don't have to pretend. And that feels real." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until the knot in my chest loosened. Still, I wasn't done. "So, what does that mean?" I asked. "What are we, Ben?" His lips twitched. "I was hoping you'd tell me." "Cop out," I said, smiling despite the nerves. He laughed, quiet and a little self-conscious. Then he leaned in and kissed me. Longer this time. Slower. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence. He didn't know how to speak out loud. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "I don't have all the answers yet," he whispered, "but I want to keep figuring them out with you." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't some dramatic declaration. But it was honest, and that was more than enough. We fell asleep like that. Curled up. Close. Safe. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon. I wandered into the kitchen, still rubbing sleep from my eyes, and there he was. Ben in pajama pants, shirtless, flipping pancakes with a concentration usually reserved for assembling IKEA furniture. "Morning," he said when he saw me, eyes crinkling. "You're just in time. I made too much, as usual." "You never make breakfast," I said, stepping closer. "Yeah, well, thought I'd try doing something boyfriend adjacent for once." I blinked at him. He froze for half a second, like he'd just realized what he said. Then he looked at me and smiled. "I mean, unless that's not what we are." I didn't answer right away. Just walked up to him, slid my arms around his bare waist, and leaned into his shoulder. "I think that's exactly what we are." I set into his skin. He kissed the side of my head, and for the first time it wasn't just a moment, it was something real, something mutual, and finally, something that felt like the start of whatever came next. Things didn't change overnight. We didn't post a couple selfie or change our relationship status. We didn't sit down and draw up a plan for what we were or where we were going. That wasn't us, but the small things started shifting. He started sleeping in my bed every night, not because he needed comfort, but because that was just where he belonged now. He'd get ready in the morning while I brushed my teeth, and he'd steal sips from my coffee without asking. Sometimes he'd reach for my hand without even thinking, just because it was there. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even romantic in the traditional sense. It was quiet. Real. We were sitting on the balcony one evening, blankets over our laps, watching the city lights flicker into life. Fall was starting to set in, crisp air, that early dusk that always made things feel more reflective. Ben had his hand wrapped around a mug of tea, mine resting loosely in his lap. He hadn't said much all night, and I figured he was just tired. But then, without looking at me, he said, "You know what scares me?" I turned to face him. "What? That I didn't see this coming?" "Us!" I stayed quiet, letting him speak. I spent so long trying to be the guy the first thought people wanted me to be, easygoing, detached. I got good at being emotionally safe. And then you, he stopped and finally looked at me. "You ruined that." I laughed softly. "Thanks, I think?" "I mean it," he said, smiling a little. "You didn't just let me fall apart. You made it okay that I did. And now I'm realizing this thing between us, it's not fragile. It's not just about filling the empty space." I let his words sink in. Then I asked, "So what is it then?" He shifted slightly, setting his mug down, pulling the blanket tighter around us. "It's the first time I felt like myself and wanted someone to actually see that version of me." I nodded, swallowing around the lump in my throat. "I see you." He leaned in and kissed me. No hesitation, no question, just lips against mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. Later that week, he came home with a toothbrush and slid it into the holder next to mine. Didn't say anything about it, just did it. I didn't mention it either, but I smiled every time I saw it there. A couple days after that, we were walking back from the grocery store when he reached for my hand and didn't let go the whole way home, even when we passed two women on the corner who looked at us a little too long. He didn't flinch, just kept walking like it was nothing. And maybe that was the most surprising part of all. Not that we ended up together, but how easy it became to stop hiding once we started being honest. It wasn't perfect. We still argued over dumb stuff. He still left wet towels on the floor and forgot to take the trash out. I still got in my head too much and didn't always say what I felt right away. But none of that scared me anymore. Because now, when I looked over and saw him beside me, whether on the couch, in bed, or just brushing his teeth next to me. It didn't feel like something that was temporary. It felt like something that grew out of real life, out of nights filled with silence and honesty, out of a single moment when he asked, "Can I sleep in your bed tonight?" That's how it started. And somehow, without meaning to, that's how we began.